we'll get them up to speed once they get their audio hooked up. So again, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where this broadcast finds you. I want to welcome you all to the another installment of our Essential Substance Abuse Skills webinar. My name is Steve Steiny. I'm one of the managers here at the American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. I'm broadcasting to you live from the University of Iowa here at the College of Public Health. I would encourage, looks like we've got some open mics in the audience. I would encourage you to just double check and make sure you stay muted for the duration of the broadcast today. We will open the floor and allow others to ask some questions. I'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to welcome you all today. Today's topic is counseling families, partners, and significant others. Carlos, I've muted you, just so you know, and Tanya, I'm going to ask you to mute as well, just so we don't get any background noise. Thank you. I've just got a few introductory slides to go through with all of you, and then we'll turn the floor over to Dr. Garcia so she can share with you some of the knowledge we have today. Some of this may be a review for you, sort of for those of you that are currently practicing, or it may be new information for you if you are. Got another open mic here. Again, I want to encourage everyone to please check and make sure you have your mute button activated.
There. I have another meeting on that.
Let's see who's got that open mic. Okay, there we go. I think I found the open mic, but again, please check to make sure you've got your mic muted at this time. So once again, I welcome you all. And this event is brought to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. As I mentioned, we're located at the University of Iowa, here at the College of Public Health. We are part of a larger national network made up of 10 regional centers, a National Hispanic and Latino Center, as well as a AKDT network coordinating office at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. This project is funded and supported by SAMHSA. The content is developed by the presenter, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian Alaska Native AKDT. Following today's event, we will reach out to you via email. This email may include links to today's recording and presentation, as well as PDF version of the slides that were reviewed today. We'll also include in that information about how you can request CEUs. We will be offering 1.5 continuing education units for attending this webinar today. You can use those to your discretion, and it may be decided upon by your certifying or licensure state entity whether or not you can utilize those, but we will offer those to you by request. And lastly, we will ask you to fill out a short survey, just giving us some feedback. Your feedback is important to us and to our center. It allows us to continue to provide events like this and continue to connect with all of you around the country. Your participation in this survey is voluntary. It only takes a few minutes. All of your information is confidential and cannot be linked to you personally in any way. Again, if you have any questions about this survey, please reach out to myself or any of my colleagues here at the University of Iowa, National American Indian Alaska Native AKDT Center. I know we're gathered here virtually today, but we want to take a few moments to acknowledge the land and pay respect to the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. Please take a moment to read this land acknowledgement, which was created by 3 members of our team, Ellen Keeley Driscoll and Mr. Sean Mayer. Thank you. Well, without further ado, I want to introduce my colleague and friend, Avis Garcia. Avis is a remote member. Whoop. Again, I'm going to ask folks to check your mics and make sure that you are muted so we don't interrupt Dr. Garcia or myself as we progress through the presentation today. So please check your mics. I'm catching an open mic from someone. Okay. Avis, if you want to check that too while I'm getting ready to pull up the slides. I think you co-hosted, so you should be able to mute anyone that's got an open mic. Tanya, I think you may have an open mic. I'm going to go ahead and mute you, just so you know. Okay, there we are. Again, Avis is an enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho Tribe and is affiliated with the Eastern Shoshone tribes of the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. I know that she's currently residing in Montana, and we are really happy to have her here. She is a licensed professional counselor and an addictions therapist and has worked in the field for many, many years. And I say that with the utmost respect, Avis. But I also know that she's worked with in a lot of different patient populations. She has a lot of experience working with.
Your standing would be in sam.gov. That's where you would go, and that's where you would appoint anyone else that wants to verify your credentials. Okay. All right. A question came in from Jackie. How do I get an LLC for my new business? Okay, that will be something you need to do with the Secretary of State of your state. Okay. For the folks that are here.
I'm not sure who that is.
Texas SOS. You can simply Google that. Okay.
Okay, I got him.
Thank you.
I'm learning.
Thank you very much. You are that's going above and beyond, Avis. I really appreciate that. Yeah, again, I'm just asking folks to please check and make sure you have a closed mic. It's very important. And that way we're not interrupting Dr. Garcia as she's sharing today. So please, if you would like to use the chat box feature, you can do this if you have questions or comments during today's presentation. And we may have some time at the end where you will be able to unmute and ask your questions directly. And we can share some ideas and thoughts at that point. So really glad to have you all here. Please close all other programs. Provide Dr. Garcia with your full attention, and we're just happy to have her here. So again, I'm going to pull down this slide deck and turn the floor over to Dr. Garcia. I'll let her talk a little bit about some of her work and things that she's done and is currently doing while I get the next set of slides up. So thank you.
Okay. As Steve was saying, I have been in the mental health and substance abuse field as a licensed professional counselor and addictions therapist, mainly in the state of Wyoming for the last couple of decades. When he says many, many years, I can't believe I'm actually saying 2 decades now. But since 2001, I've been licensed in Wyoming as a professional counselor and an addictions therapist. I'm also nationally certified by the National Board of Counseling. And I am recently licensed in Montana now as a licensed addiction counselor and a licensed clinical professional counselor in Montana. I currently am employed as the Behavioral Health Services Director for the Absoligai Healing, which is on the Crow Agency, Crow Tribal Reservation area. I have been here since June 28th, so I haven't been here for quite a year yet. My work has been in various capacities throughout the state of Wyoming. I've worked with corrections. I've worked with drug courts, school counseling programs, mental health and treatment programs combined. I've worked in all levels of treatment. I started out working for an agency in Rock Springs, Wyoming called Southwest Counseling. That was where I started my provisional work and obtained my initial licensure. And I also have my degrees that I've earned all from the University of Wyoming, my bachelor's, master's, and my PhD in counseling and supervision. And I have been working with the Addiction Technology Transfer Center since 2019, doing a variety of webinars on substance abuse and mental health topics. And today we are going to be talking about counseling families, partners, and significant others. This is all a part of preparing those that are interested in the substance abuse field and who are planning to sit for the licensing or certification exam. This is one of the books that I've purchased on my own, and I highly recommend it if you're preparing to sit for this exam. This is the book that is from NADAC, and they have a series of 3 books that they also have their own exam. So that's why I like these books, is these guys have their own exam for certifications that are acknowledged in the state, which is the exam I took for my addiction therapy test. And this one is module 2 of 3. And this one is addiction counseling theories and practices and skills. I don't know if you guys can see that very well.
It's yeah, it's a little blurry.
Blurring. Yeah,
yeah,
darn it.
I think the
Sorry.
sunlight is causing some issues, but
Yeah.
we'll try and get maybe Avis can provide a link or something at the end to that
Yeah.
website if you want to get
If
a
you
hold
go
of it.
to the NADAC website, it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. It's really like succinct and right to the point.
Yeah.
And that's why I like that book. Okay.
There's another resource too. It's a website called Ready to Test. It's all kind of run together, readytotest.com. And they have some study prep guides. One is extremely comprehensive. Sometimes we suggest that the agency you work for purchase this and then have it sort of on reserve for different staff to check out and use as a study guide or a prep material. But it's readytotest.com. If you're interested in that too. So.
And I mean, and this is just a good refresher for people working in the field already. Do we have any licensed family practitioners out there? Do we have any family counselors on today's session?
Any MFTs in the house?
I'm not seeing any responses from anyone.
What does your probation department agreement say? Does it just say can't use controlled substances, or does
Okay.
it specifically say
Yeah, that
do not use
that
medical
doesn't
marijuana? You gotta
that
look
doesn't
at
surprise me.
what the
Somebody's
conditions say.
got an open mic
Maybe
again.
someone
Yep,
about
I'm gonna
this
check here.
rehabilitation and something
I think the
objective.
new people that jump
Somebody
on
wants to
don't
learn more about
realize
that, send me
we
an
can
email,
hear
and
everything.
I will tell you more about that. Do they have a history of substance abuse? Are they dishonest? Are they a danger to the
Yeah.
general public? For example,
Yeah,
You can
who's
go on
got the
ahead.
open mic?
condition was driving under the influence of
I'm
marijuana.
looking to
Now
see
they want
if
to
I
use
can
medical
spot them.
marijuana and they're on the roadway. History of recidivism and
I'm
probation
hitting
I
the,
got it.
okay,
I
you
got
got
it.
it.
Jennifer Rodriguez, I have muted you. You may not have known your mic was open, but please, again, be mindful of that as we get started here.
Yeah, this is being recorded, so it's coming up on our recording. You can go on ahead and move the slide, Steve. Move on to the next one. Okay, today's presentation will focus on the dynamics of families, couples, and significant others who are affected by substance use. And this will help you to become familiar with models of intervention to use with families, couples, and significant others, including extended kinship and tribal family structures that we'll talk about a little bit. This will help you to assist families and couples and significant others and their interactions in the family system with their substance use behaviors. To help, all of this is to help you understand the family dynamics and what types of family therapy are most frequently used in working with families that are struggling with substance use. And the reason I was asking if we had any counselors out there, we don't have one here on our staff here at Crow Agency. We make a lot of referrals to the behavioral health services at Indian Health Services here, and they are shorter staffed than we are here, but we are working on incorporating some family day activities into the program that I work with here. So as I've been working here, I have been as sort of being a consultant and seeing some of the things that we need. And not only don't have a family therapist here, licensed master's level counselors are hard to find in this area, very, very hard. So I applaud all of you sitting out there that are doing this work, because we need people to help people. And a lot of this working with families, when I got my, you can switch the slide to the concepts and the foundations. What brought me to this field initially was, and as I was reading, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that this can be an intergenerational problem, this substance abuse. And part of why I got into this field was I grew up in this environment. I struggled, growing up with a parent who actively used. So my grandparents raised me, which I find quite common even on this Crow reservation, of finding grandparents still raising their grandkids. And I have friends doing the same, because this drug and alcohol, is really affecting our people across Indian country. It's not just on my reservation. I'm seeing a lot of common things that I saw back home that I see here. And a lot of they call it dysfunction, but it's probably normal to a lot of us, is just have been our adapting and coping with substance abuse in the family. And so these therapies are really effective in helping people open their eyes and realize that, hey, maybe there's some changes that can be made here to help, our family to break those cycles and do things differently. And so I talk a lot, I tell a lot of stories. I'm native, we're storytellers. That's how I do my presentations. So getting back to the topic here, like I said, I grew up in this, and I went to a presentation where my younger sister was in treatment and my mother was already gone by then. So my grandparents and myself were the family that went to the family therapy that the treatment center offered. And I remember seeing the ladies presenting this family presentation, and right then and there, I was really fascinated and really wanted to get into the work. I wanted to find out what I needed to do to be able to do the job that I do today. So that's kind of, the story of how I got here. Some of the key reasons to use family therapy are to build upon family strengths. Strength-based anything working with natives is very effective. We want to improve communication. Communication is a big thing, and I see it a lot in Indian country, starting with our youth. A lot of people, I've been told here in this Crow area that a lot of this quiet is their culture, and it's the same with the Arapaho people where I come from. Our communication is be quiet and listen to the person talking. And so we have different ways that we take in information and learn from it. We want to help the families to decrease conflict, and that is common in dealing with substance abuse issues. Reduce the impact of the substance use disorder, any mental health issues that might be apparent, and any significant events within the family dynamic. And I just have other there if there's any other things. So many times the answers are within the family. They are the experts on what's going on in their household. So this here just talks briefly about what family means to you. The first bullet here talks about the ancestral sense of family being those connected by blood, whether living together or not. This is from, if you can see, from the 1540 to the 1600s, later replaced by suitable for a family in the 1800s. Buzzword family values was first recorded in 1966. Group of relatives, a group of people closely related by birth, marriage or adoption, people living together, many people living together, functioning as a single household, usually consisting of the biological parents and their biological children. Lineage, all descendants from the common ancestor, and for Native Americans, that goes beyond parents and siblings. So we have these big, huge families in Indian country, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the cultural specific information. As I was saying, when I got my master's degree, I focused on general, the counseling, the mental health counseling track. And there was a family therapy counseling track, and I was just like afraid of it. So when I went back for my PhD, of course, I verbalized that the only thing I didn't have experience in at the time was family theory, family therapy in the professional sense. And lo and behold, my instructor literally threw me into family therapy, which I began to love and enjoy. So it is a really important part of treatment if you can get the family involved on whatever level. You know, sometimes I have youth and their grandmother that come to see me, and if it's just those two that want to come, hey, that's his family. You know, we'll go with that, as long as they can get that support that they need. Family therapy is often seen as a type of therapy that involves all the members of the family, our step family, in some cases, you know, extended or adopted family. There may be grandparents, like I was raised by my grandparents. My grandma and grandpa raised me. Foster parents, legal guardians, a therapist or a team of therapists. And in my ideal situation, I love to do family therapy. I like to do it with another therapist. That's just how I like to work if I get an opportunity to do it. So it's good that you know your limitations and you get the help if you're unfamiliar with it. But this is just to give you the overview and the understanding for when you sit for the exam and you have those questions, you understand what these are and you're able to answer those. Can move to the next slide. Okay, the concepts of family therapy is the whole system is more than the sum of its parts. So we're looking at everything all together. Everything is interconnected. Certain rules determine the functioning of the family system. This is what I said, they create these coping mechanisms to work to contain the substance abuse problem that's going on in the family system. So just the family acting in private behind closed doors of how they interact with one another on a day-to-day basis creates those rules of the don't talk, don't feel, and don't trust. And so it's helping them realize that they've all become enmeshed in a situation that needs to be addressed to better help the person who needs help. Or maybe there's more than one person. Sometimes it's both the parents or more than one child or adolescent in the family. So the systems are dynamic and carefully balancing continuity against change. But we also have to remember that Native family systems are not based upon the Western nuclear family system. We know that we are different. Go to the next slide. The purpose of family therapy is to help the family improve communication, solve problems, understand and handle special family situations. There are events that happen in all of our lives that, if we're not prepared to deal with those, can really cause a lot of disruption in the family system. And some people choose to cope using substances. And again, if this is generational, this may just be what they've seen and continued. Looking at mental illness and adolescent issues. So being able to know your resources in your community to make those referrals if needed, to help the family as a unit and not just focus on that one individual, which oftentimes I think tribal families like to identify the person is that's the person that needs help, when in all reality, if the family is open to hearing, hey, let's look at your family and see what kind of interaction is going on here. And go on to the next slide. The description of family therapy, it's often initiated to address a specific problem, such as an adolescent with a psychological disorder, substance use disorder, adjustment to death of, or any other significant change in family structure. It could be a divorce, it could be a loss of a job, they could lose, any big thing. I think there's a list that you can do your evaluate yourself against stressors, and all of these listed here are like big ones. Frequently, therapy sessions reveal other problems, mainly communication issues. In therapy, therapists want to analyze the process of the family's interaction and communication with one another as a whole. Again, looking at your ethics and not taking sides with any specific member. That's why I say when I work with people, I like to have another therapist if possible, because then you can actually, how I've done it is talking openly with the other therapist right in front of the family so they can hear, what our thoughts are. And I like to be as transparent as possible if I can be in my work. Therapists who work as a team can model new behaviors for the family through their interactions with each other during the session. Some of the challenges to involving the family in the treatment process. Engaging everyone in the family unit can be very difficult. The who, the what, the when, how must be given careful consideration. You have to have proper training to do this, and it's not, something that just anyone can do. So it's something I want to, caution people to think about. But there's nothing wrong with providing family education. The other challenges are, you see listed here, is resistance and unwillingness. That's fine. Hopefully the person eventually will come around, or the family that is participating can go home and share what they learned with the person who decides not to be involved. Again, this is something foreign to Native families. I don't see a whole lot of families in Indian country actively engaging in therapy. When I was last on my own reservation, I started seeing more couples coming together. So for me, that was the start of bringing those people in. Other challenges is severe deterioration of the family unit. Lots of times I see single moms struggling, just to take care of their, what family they have in the home, the children that they have. Having the opportunity or the time to engage the family. I mean, I was just talking to my staff. We're trying to plan some family events here. Since the weather's going to be nice, we thought we might do some stuff outdoors. Dealing with impaired family members. Some may be actively using, might have some untreated mental health issues, and there may be some past abuse or domestic violence. So there's a whole lot of factors that can cause some challenges here. Revealing some unresolved conflicts in the family. There is always the potential for harm or marked increase in conflict. You know, there's risks involved. There's no guarantee that family therapy is the cure-all for families struggling with substance abuse. And also the lack of staff or experience and or training. And I don't know if there's any other barriers that others might be aware of that we experience. Some places may need to provide childcare or help family make arrangements to get childcare to attend. Some that I have here is transportation, because this reservation is so huge. We finally have our transportation system that is helping with that. On to the next slide. The foundations of counseling, we have individual therapy to provide that individual focus to help people become fully themselves. And then the family therapy believes the dominant forces in our lives are located externally in the family. The family therapy is directed towards changing the organization of the family. And that means changing the organization of the family for the better, to improve their communication and improve their interactions with one another, and make them more aware of the roles that they take on in their family, and how they can, be more supportive to the family member that is needing their help and support. Some perspectives. And the Bowenian family therapy. And Murray Bowen is probably the person given credit for being one of the developers of family therapy. And his idea is based on that multi-generational transmission of problems that needs to be addressed within the family unit, but focuses on the present. It's a comprehensive view of human behavior and human problems, looks at unresolved issues in our original families is the most important, centered around counterbalancing life forces of being able to be together with your family and being able to stand alone from your family. So being able to just have that healthy interaction of being with your family, but yet still maintaining your individual identity. We can go to the next slide. The next one is the experiential, also known as humanistic family therapy, also focuses on the present. The emphasis is on the interaction between the therapist and the family, focused on promoting choice, self-determination, and actualization of the family. So this is designed to change families by changing family members. Families are treated as groups of individuals more than as systems. There is enhanced sensitivity and expanded awareness are the essential aims of treatment, and the focus is on interpersonal change and a commitment to growth as opposed to problem solving. This is also founded on the idea that cause and effect of family problems is emotional suppression. So that's keeping those feelings to yourself and not having that healthy communication of being able to share, I'm having a bad feeling, or I've been feeling bad lately, or I'm having anxiety, whatever it is, being able to talk more about feelings that they're having with the family in the family system. Structural therapy comes from Salvador Minuchin, focuses on family interactions and resulting family structure. So this is another way of looking at families. The techniques include reframing, punctuation, unbalancing, restructuring, enactment, boundary formation, working with spontaneous interaction, intensity, and shaping competence. Every family has a structure revealed when the family is in action. Structure influences for better or worse. Families that have an open and appropriate structure recover more quickly and function better in the long term. The structural approach emphasizes the family as a whole, as well as subunits. A person's symptoms are best understood as rooted in the context of the family transaction patterns. The family is the patient. So this is helping the family to focus on how they can work together to have better functioning. We can go to the next slide. The strategic perspective is strategic family therapy. It is a combination of Ericksonian and Bateson therapy. Erik Erikson broadened the developmental perspective beyond early childhood that focuses on establishing balance between ourselves and the social world. It is a biosocial approach. It's developed a body of powerful procedures and may vary in the specifics of theory and technique. The focus in family therapy is on solving problems in the present and not dwelling on underlying issues from the past. This family therapy originated by Jay Haley and Chloe Medanes. And this strategic family therapy is similar to structural therapy, but more directive with planned strategies to make changes in the family's communication patterns. The cognitive behavioral perspective. Cognitive behavioral theory is real popular in the substance abuse addiction treatment, or any addiction treatment, to say that. We don't have just substance abuse. Addiction therapy does address process addictions that don't involve actual taking of any substance. So CBT really looks at the thinking and the behavior, where the clinician is seen as the teacher. They substitute positive controls. Family symptoms are treated as learned responses, involuntary, acquired, and reinforced. Again, that's that don't talk, don't feel, don't trust scenario, and focus on subsystems considered central to the targeted behaviors. So oftentimes in that family system that are working to conceal that substance use problem in the home, you know, the mother may be talking with one of the children of, you know, certain things of how they're gonna function or operate. So it is looking at contingency contracting and contracting management. So the CBT can involve some type of behavior contracts for their working together as a family under certain circumstances. The contingency management process is being able to say, you know, if you complete these certain tasks, you can do these things that you'd like to do. There may be some role rehearsal. That also part of this cognitive behavioral therapy is the PREMAT principle. Using high probability behavior or preferred activities to reinforce low probability behavior and non-preferred activities. But there is a lot of research behind the contingency management being effective in the substance abuse treatment. Can go to the next slide. Okay, moving on to the more current perspectives. This is the solution-focused perspective, also known as solution-focused brief therapy. Looking at pragmatic minimalism, it has a cognitive emphasis and easily teachable techniques. There is less emphasis on history and underlying pathology. Patients concentrate more on solutions rather than on problems. They have little to say about how problems arise, prefer to focus on the future. Its contributors are Erickson, Haley, Cloma Danes, Tom Anderson, and Michael White. This is probably one of my most favorite that I like to use, even with individual counseling, because it is so simple and easy to use. To me, it's measurable because when I check in with them, I'm able to use the patient rating scale of, if there's a certain behavior we're working on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe their goal is a 7 and they're at a 3 or a 4. So they're able to check in with you and give you some feedback on that solution focused work. So the focus on what the patient wants to achieve rather than problems that made them seek help. So we can go on to the next slide. The narrative perspective. This one is really effective also with Native Americans. Like I told you, we're storytellers, but for me, the narrative truth versus the historical truth of changing that story. I've seen the narrative perspective, worked in trauma of, let's do a new story of, let's take your story and let's make it a story of strength and empowerment and encouraging them to see the positives of like how they got through everything they've been through to where they are now. So looking at the incompatible systems of thinking and has distanced itself from the concepts and methods of traditional family therapy. So it is, retelling your story, making a new, better story that makes them feel more, I want to see, I'm looking for the word cathartic. So it's more of healing and helping them get some things processed and get them out. A lot more people I'm noticing in Indian country are more open to sharing stories than they have in the past too. And it's just something I've observed over my length of time being in the field that I'm in. So it is very effective with natives. We can go to the next slide. The functional perspective. The functional family therapy is a family-based prevention and intervention program that's been applied successfully in a variety of contexts to treat a range of high-risk youth and their families. It's a good example of the current generation family-based treatments. It's concerned with the function that family behavior is designed to achieve, assumes most family behaviors are attempts to become more or less intimate, sets up contingency management programs to help them get the kind of intimacy they might want more directly, and blends strategic and behavioral therapies. Go on to the next slide. The family disease perspective encourages people to fight problems with medication, support groups, education, rather than to explore the network of relationships where their problems are embedded. As I was reading here in, I lost my page, sorry, let me get back to that. The family disease model. The family disease model, according to the family disease model, psychoactive substance dependence is a family disease. Obviously, the psychoactive substance use disorder is the disease of the user, but codependence is the disease of each family member. Within a family structure, each member plays a significant role in continuing the use and addiction by enabling the individual. This is usually accomplished by making it easier for the individual to continue his or her behavior and avoid negative consequences. The goal of family therapy is to identify and examine each member's codependent role and transform that behavior into real support for the individual. And like I was sharing with you guys, when I went to the family treatment with my grandparents for my younger sister at the time, they put the dysfunctional family up on the big screen. And I remember my grandma identifying herself as the enabler. She goes, "That's me right there." And I was real surprised to be like, yeah, you are. And I know that because I say my grandmother would put me on she'd put me on a pedestal. I used to tell people, I said, I could be a bank robber and my grandma would have me being the best one there is. But it was really, I think, eye-opening for me at the time to see that we actually take on these roles as we deal with this problem. So instead of helping the person continue to use, what can we do to help them to get better? So we can go on to the next slide of the multi-systemic and multi-dimensional perspective. Resulted out of research with a difficult adolescence, uses a combination of techniques, so it's called multi-systemic. Actively considering and intervening into the extrafamilial systems in which families are embedded. We can skip over that one. This is one that I really didn't see much mention in my research I'm doing. Okay. Again, this was developed by Howard Little. Integrated comprehensive family-centered treatment for teen drug abuse and behavioral problems. Focuses on key areas of the adolescent's life and provides cost-effective and efficient treatment. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Looking at strategies and techniques for working with families. You want to have proper seating. The patients should feel comfortable in a calm, comfortable environment. Meeting separate with each person and then together. Building rapport with the identified patient. Be prepared with an agenda, but flexible if the need arises. It is a process to allow for several sessions to reach goals and objectives, modeling communication, managing conflict and negative language. And to be honest with you, those working with Native families, this is really difficult with Native families because I've only gotten them to come in for a few sessions from my personal experience. Most of them will come in crisis, but getting them to come back doesn't always continue. I think that's why I like the solution-focused approach, because you're able to help them with some immediate things and get them some skills that they can take with them, because I haven't seen any particular family unit come in for counseling to work with substance abuse. So I mostly focus on educating the family, and those that are more open to getting counseling are the ones that you can work with. And I'm just letting you know that. I think the most successful work I've had has been on the reservation and having family come to sweat lodges. So that has been my most success, has been bringing families together through the sweat lodge. Go to the next slide. And we're moving on to the cultural considerations. This is the part I told you I would talk a little bit more about. The definition of family origin, the birth of biological or any family system instrumental or significant in the patient's early development. When we look at the cultural considerations, increased immigration and contact with the global media exposed cultures. Is our own worldview healthy? Differences aren't necessarily problematic. overemphasis on ethnicity can lead counselors to exaggerate the difference between themselves and their patients. And that's not, okay. Ethnicity is a powerful meaning generator. And I am Northern Arapaho. I'm from the Wind River Reservation. My father was Eastern Shoshone, but you can only be enrolled in one tribe. So I'm Northern Arapaho. And I moved here to Crow Country, and I hired a cultural counselor. So he's like my consultant go-to person, because I have to be careful of how I do things here. I have to respect the people that I work with. So I'm learning from him every day that I'm here. So I see a lot of similarities, and then I see some differences that, you know, I make myself aware of. So it's good to pay attention to those differences with cultural considerations. And I have had a lot of family counseling off the reservation. So I can tell you that I've had families that were not native, that were probably the most regular, showed up all the time, and really, you know, were really working and being successful in the work that we did. But that is just, I think this, when I read this slide, I'm reading it as somebody who's coming in that is not native, dealing with another culture, mainly people of color. You can change the slide. Race and ethnicity: American Indians, Native Americans, Alaska Natives. Everybody has their preference of what they choose to be called. I prefer to identify myself as I'm an Arapaho. This is a slide that was here when I took on these presentations, and it kind of gives you like a breakout of the Native American family based on Native traditions. And some families in Indian country are maternal, have that maternal leadership to them, and some have the paternal leadership to them. But mainly in the middle would be my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather, and my mother and father. But for me, I was raised by my grandparents. And then I tell people, even if, you know, my mother didn't have alcohol problems, I would have been at my grandparents anyway. I just loved being at my grandparents' house all the time. And so I always say I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them. But I had several family members that I thought were biological, only to find out as I got older that they were adopted family members. These were not, you know, one of my uncles that is still my close uncle today is someone that my grandparents adopted, because he didn't have a mother when he was growing up. So my grandma kind of, and I was raised, when your kids come into your home as an Arapaho, you treat those kids like your own children. So our house was, my uncle's friends could come over and they just went to the kitchen and helped themselves, get their own coffee, whatever they make themselves at home. And that was just how I was raised. Our cousins are our brothers and our sisters. Even on the Shoshone side, my siblings, my family on my dad's side call me sister. So they don't call me cousin, they call me sister. And so we often refer to them as our cousin brothers or our cousin sisters, and our aunts and uncles are like an extension of parents. We are to respect them that way as well. So like I say, there's a lot of adoption. As I've gotten older in my life, I too have adopted some kids. Like I have a girl who lost her mother when she was, I think, 2 years old, and she's graduating college this Friday. So I'm all excited for her. And, you know, I've kind of tried to be there for her as much as I can through all of that. So this is just our way of life and how we live our life and how we support each other. And that's just native life. And it's the same way here where I live. I see these people refer to their relatives in the same way in Crow Country as we do back home. We can go to the next slide. These are the 7 values of Dakota, Lakota, Nakota life, which again, I see a lot of similarities to Arapaho life. I think what I heard a while back was the 7 generations, and that younger generation now in their early late teens, early 20s, they're our 7th generation already. I'm like, wow, how time has passed. But we look at praying, wisdom, respect, honesty, humility, caring and compassion, generosity, and helping. And these are common to, if you don't live your life right, you ever look at the medicine wheel and how we balance our life, and if something's not right somewhere, then we're lopsided or we're not doing things the right way. And the way I was raised, again, coming from an Arapaho, is if you don't live your life right, you know, do things right, then things aren't going to go right. Like if you're not honest, and so we have these beliefs is when you violate that, then of course things don't go right. And one of the things I see with the substance users is they do not participate in a lot of our cultural ways. So it's bringing them back to that. You can go to the next slide. The other is sexual and gender orientation, the native LGBTQ population, the two-spirit people. And we can go to the next slide. I've had a lot of experience working with this population. This slide here talks about the LGBTQ population may create their own replacement family, that people that are more significant to them. A lot of the people that I have worked with, especially the younger people, have shared with me their struggles of their own family not accepting them and feeling like outcasts. But most often, if I get to know them more, I find out they have someone in the family that they are really close to. And it's often one of them aunties, you know, that is always there to look out and support them. So I often encourage them to really build on that relationship. And if you can bring them in to help that person who's struggling with recovery, it's really helpful to be able to do that. You can include, this can include their friends, their partners, their families of their partners, you know, significant others and blood relatives. So they're just like anybody else. They come in with the same problems everyone else does. I enjoy working with them, and they, like I said, the one of the common things I see that they struggle with is being open and being accepted by their own family and their own community, which I feel, again, all these years of being in the field, I'm seeing things change to where people are a lot more open with these types of relationships in their life, and they all want to belong and live happy lives too. But a lot of their struggles with use has been centered around not being accepted by their own family. You can go to the next slide. The stages of family change. There is the attainment of sobriety, the adjustment to sobriety, and long-term maintenance of sobriety. So it's a long road, and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes work for people. So that's why it's important to look at the family dynamics, which we can go to the next slide. Family dynamics, previously referred to as codependency. Other words often used is the dysfunctional family, but I like to say I think we're all dysfunctional on some level. There is no perfect family. Then we often hear the word of enabling. Again, that's helping that person to continue what it is they're doing, controlling others as they believe they are incapable of taking care of themselves. They may be low self-esteem and a tendency to deny their own feelings. And also being excessively compliant. Those are our people pleasers. So sometimes we have to remind people that you're not there to please everybody. You have to put yourself first. Okay. You can go to the next slide. More on the family dynamics, often overreacting in an oversensitive manner. There may be some hypervigilance and a lower tolerance for stress. So teaching some stress management techniques, remaining loyal to people who do nothing to deserve their loyalty. Again, really looking at those issues within each individual to be more themselves, a better self, to help their own family. Feel less able or powerless to influence the family dynamics, and domestic violence. So we have to be mindful of domestic violence that could be going on in the family and being able to support people through that as well. And then there's a video here that is too long to put in here, that if you look it up, it talks about why victims don't leave. That has a lot to do with the family dynamics. Go to the next slide. When the patient lives with a partner and minor children, always ask yourself, what you're sharing, how is it going to benefit the patient? So this is similar to maltreatment victims. Children believe the abuse is their fault. Children feel guilty and responsible for their parents' drinking problem. Trust and intimacy are key child development issues. So it affects children at all stages of life development. There's an increased risk for mood and anxiety disorders, increased rates of divorce, violence, and need for control in relationships. Some children develop resiliency and adaptability. Go to the next slide. The adolescent who lives with the family of origin, there could be some violent behavior, delinquency, psychiatric disorders, risky sexual behavior, impulsivity, so neurological impairment, and possibly developmental impairment. Next slide. Affective substance use disorders and family structures. If the patient lives with a partner, patient lives with partner and minor children,
Hi.
the patient is part of a blended family. Hello?
I got it. I don't know if Catherine, if you wanted to ask a question or you just had opened your mic inadvertently. I just muted her.
Okay.
Sorry.
Are an older patient with adult children and an adolescent patient and family of origin. So these are all the different family structures that we could be looking at when we're working with families. The clinician involvement. There are 4 levels of clinician involvement with families. The level 1 is the minimal emphasis of family. Interaction with parents are more institution-centered and not family-centered. Families are not regarded as an important area of focus, and parents are dealt with for practical or legal reasons. So that's when there is minimal involvement. The level 2 is for information and advice. Okay. The level 2, you may have content information about the families, look at parenting and child development. They may be open to, engaging the family in collaborative ways, looking at communicating clearly and asking more questions, providing information on community resources. Level 3, focuses on feelings and support, understand the individual and family reactions to stress and the emotional aspects of the group process. We can focus on feelings in relation to parents and the family process. Tailoring recommendations to the unique needs of that family. And level 4 would be a brief focused intervention to help would be understanding family systems development, being aware of one's own participation in the system, including their own family system, and the systems of parents and the larger community systems. So this is where you can get a lot more detailed information about the family and get specific in setting them up with appropriate family counseling services if you have that available. The next one is the 7 C's for couples and families. And that is looking at the character features of the family, the cultural and ethnic factors, looking at contract features, the level of commitment, caring, communication, and conflict resolution. So those are some core ideas. The 7C character features, characteristics, a person that tends to be persistent and play a major role in defining that person. They're comfortable with who they are, and it's helped them to cope with their life. Cultural and ethnic factors, variables that form the context in which individuals and couples exist. So we're looking at the surrounding cultural forces that shape those relationships. Remember, not all cultures view life, relationships, and family the same as the counselor or therapist. So they have their own. We're not there to impose ours upon them. That's theirs. So check your own biases, your own values, and your own beliefs. The contract features. That's the next slide. This is a set of implicit or explicit expectations that partners have concerning how they will define their relationship and relate with one another. An effective contract is explicit, attainable, mutually agreed upon, and beneficial to both partners, both working towards an effective goal. The next one is commitment. Pledged, devoted, or obligated to oneself, being involved with, remaining loyal to, maintaining a relationship over time. So the 2 types of relationships would be stability and quality. Those relationships that may have difficulty but are stable over time. Those that have quality despite time apart for work and study. The next one is a person's caring, a person's ability to express behaviors that promote emotional and physical intimacy. So that's that caring, expressed through affection and sexual intimacy, mutually pleasing activities, quality time together, enjoying a supportive and understanding friendship. Both are committed through a caring relationship and closeness. Next slide. Communication, positive daily communication equals relationship success. Negative communications are characterized by expressions of negative feelings, anger, shame. Thus, the message is not heard by the listener. Couples and family that take time to communicate with one another. Communication meets negotiations in the middle. Couples are family that are at odds because of internal thoughts, feelings, and emotions may or may not be true. The subjective self-interpretations of language or behavior in relationships. The next one is conflict resolution, personal skills and interpersonal interaction patterns that promote effective decision making. Here is an acronym that is helpful to think about when dealing with conflict resolution. The S is to stop, slow down, and see the problem. O is outlining what are our options. L is looking at the consequences of those options. And B is to vote which one you're going to take. And E is to evaluate. Solve is much like making treatment plans. Many times anger or resentment will be an obstacle, so it's very important to approach conversations in a positive, calm manner. If you need to, take a break to calm yourself. The next slide. The 7 C's summary. Take time to think through personal and relationship areas to help identify strengths to build upon and goals to strive for. Are they socially compatible personal values and healthy personality, love, affection, emotional support and balance, loyalty to the partnership with long-term perspective, accompanied by the will to work out problems, open and effective communication, strong family traditions and compatible cultural and ethnic backgrounds, a marital contract that is flexible and a match between expectations and experiences, use of healthy and effective problem solving, anger management, and conflict resolution tools. And when you want to take a family history, which is really important to get if you're going to do therapy with the family, all patients, you might want to look at the family rules of the system. Is there any history of physical, emotional, spiritual, or sexual trauma? This most often can be done by using a genogram, where all family members expected to behave or evolve in a certain way. What were the family's expectations in regard to careers, relationships, appearance, status, or environment? And in general, was sex ever discussed? And I can tell you, again, when you're looking at different tribes, I see differences in just the topic of sex. I was raised by my Arapaho grandparents that taught me that that was something private. The LGBTQ patients was anyone else in the family acknowledged as identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender individuals. How did the family respond to the other individuals coming out or being identified as LGBT individuals? Is the patient out of his or her family? If the patient is out, what type of response did he or she receive? So when they mean out, are they open about their identity, that they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgendered, and is their family, how are they responding to that? Like I said, based on my personal experience in the field that I've been in for as long as I have, usually one of the main problems they bring is struggling with acceptance by their own family. Next slide. Looks like we're getting close on time here. Guidelines for working with LGBTQ families demonstrate support and understanding for the life partners and significant others. Be sensitive to the individual's self-identification, sensitive to diversity and variety of relationships in the LGBTQ community, demonstrate support and understanding for the life partners and significant others, be sensitive to the individual's self-identification, and be sensitive to the diversity and variety of relationships in the LGBTQ community. Individual and organizational mission. Because LGBT communities are underserved and often invisible, it's important that treatment providers make a commitment to serving this population and incorporate the commitment into the organization's mission statement, philosophy, and service literature. Examine all aspects of a program for overt and covert expressions and perceptions of heterosexual bias. Make a commitment at every level of the program, from the board of directors to the direct line of staff, to design and deliver services in a manner sensitive to the needs of the LGBTQ individuals. And that is the last slide. Next slide. Any thoughts, ideas, feedback, questions?
Nora says she's having trouble hearing. I'm not sure, Nora, what's happened. We haven't made any adjustments on this end, so maybe just check your audio. Sorry about that. Sharon D has her hand up. Sharon, please unmute if you'd like to ask a question directly.
Yeah, well, there was a couple of questions. They're not that specifically related, but are a part and parcel to the whole subject matter. And the first was in terms of the treatment and counseling, and you're particularly talking of a significant other, but could be a sibling as well. If that person themselves is also in recovery or not even entered the arena of recovery in terms of their own, motivational change status, is that handled in a, I don't mean a special way, but add additional consideration from the counseling standpoint? And the second was more along the lines of the family group and whether or not you have found it helpful or done to have almost a psychoeducational session with the family with regard to SUD. I worked at a residential community, and before the residents, it was female, were allowed to go on what they called a day pass, leaves the site with their family. The family members had to attend a mandatory session with one of the, so there's just a couple of things that, because we're talking of the family and or significant others, I just wondered if those are, and honestly, in the psychoed part, it also came up in my head during the discussion of the family disease perspective, and also with the lack of licensed mental health people, that if that is necessary, you have someone such as myself who is not licensed, but is involved in psychoeducational groups, conduct that piece on behalf of, or preliminary to unload some of the work that might be required. I guess that's it. It's kind of a roundabout question.
Mm. Well, I feel like you gave me two questions. The first was if dealing with someone in treatment and counseling, maybe the family, and we have the identified patient, but yet as you work with that family, you discover there's another family member who presents with a substance use disorder from your viewpoint. Was that what you were asking?
Yeah, it was kind of two questions, and it would be even whether you discover it or you almost know it on time. For example, you're dealing with the female in a significant other relationship is the male, but they're both at a stage of either addiction recovery, maybe at the same phase, maybe at different ones. So that when you're, and so that was more, I think, in lines with the significant other. And there was two questions. You perceived that correctly. And again, the second was more along the lines of whether there's a preliminary psychoed piece, because some of the resistance, et cetera, rejection from family is lack of knowledge about even addiction being SUD versus, that whole idea of it's not really a choice kind of thing, even very basic preliminary understanding of the problem that there's person's having.
Wow. I have not encountered working with a family, but I often, where I work now, the people that I work with are residents of this community. So they know a lot of people's families here. And so oftentimes they tell me, well, this person lives in the family, and, they'll give me like the background of like more information than I needed to know, kind of information. And I often, we always focus on the person that does come in. And we were just talking this morning about, doing some family stuff. And I pointed out to them that this is going to be psychoeducational. We're not providing therapy. We're providing educational information to the families when they do come in. I would hope that if a family did come in, that a counselor is skilled enough to be able to maybe approach that in a respectful manner, because I believe it could be addressed, but I have not personally encountered that situation, so I can't say exactly. But if it were to happen, and I might be there, again, I don't have qualified family therapists or behavioral health therapists. I'm on a reservation where we have counselors in training that they really do an excellent job here, which is why I was asking people how many out there are actually using family therapists. I'm trying to work with behavioral health more closely, and behavioral health from Indian Health Services, to get them to come here, like even if it's once a month or twice a month, just to do some sort of presentations here from their professional counselors that they do have, because we only deal with the substance abuse aspects here and we refer there. So I'm trying to integrate or work with them so that we're working more closely alongside them to help with not just family stuff, but the mental health issues that a lot of our clients present with.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that same integration can be helpful too when, for example, the counselor works with a case manager. The case manager is assigned as such, and that again takes away the focus of the counselor being on things that are related to case management, because it's a whole, it can be combined, but when you're short-staffed, you want to free up time for the main focus. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I also see Andrea J has her hand up as well.
Good morning. My comments were along the line of the previous person. I think having a conversation about the challenges with the shortage of mental health providers and the difficulties of recruiting and maintaining licensed clinicians is needed. We're a 638 tribal program for Hopi Behavioral Health, but we're housed inside an Indian Health Service unit, and we have barriers all the way around. They follow a higher credentialing and licensing process than the state of Arizona does. And so I'm licensed with the state of Arizona as a licensed independent substance abuse counselor, and I've got a master's degree. But I had to be pulled off of responding to the on-call rotation, because they'll only honor psychologists, PsyDs, and clinical social workers, LCSW. And all the rest of us were taken off. So we're trying to get creative in our supervision. Most of our clinicians are master level, but they're not licensed. Some of them have is it the LADC or the LADAC? But that's substance abuse. It seems to be more the mental health area. We only have one clinical psychologist, and we contracted another clinical psychologist that helps with the supervision. So I'd like to hear more about how other 638 tribal facilities are functioning given the shortage of clinicians. But we're planning on training some peer support specialists under the substance abuse program to help with the need, because there's a high need and not a lot of resources in our area. Thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to how it is here too.
Yeah, Andrea, reach out to me and or Avis via email, and we can talk some more about that. I see Albert had a question in the chat, and I think maybe he's going to ask you directly. So Albert, you have the floor, sir.
Hey, Majuksasa, Kachi Hiama. Hello, Avis.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. It was amazing, really
Thank you.
powerful.
Thank you.
I've been working in the field for 21 years now in substance use disorder, different levels, from detox to high intensity residential, family transitional. Outpatient, intensive outpatient, and mostly in urban Indian community at a urban Indian health center, and but always having a link and a connection to our frontier and tribal communities. And my question is more your own personal experience around cultural integration into the Western approaches, which you've answered some of those questions, and the differences between working with and there's degrees to acculturation and assimilation and indoctrination from working with the more rural frontier tribal communities and how colonization has impacted them versus those families who were impacted by relocation or forced removal, especially to the urban centers. And now we have generations, so it's compound and complex, where families have been so far removed from either the reservation culture and they're assimilated into the Western approaches, like we've bought in, and now they're coming to the clinics asking for some culture, or not. Like it's a non-issue sometimes. I just want to get well. I just want my family to be well, and we'll do whatever it takes. And so I'm working on the reservation now, and I find it gosh, I don't want to say the wrong word, but I'm finding that working with our family systems here seems a little bit more focused because we have all the families here on the reservation. So we're getting some family buy-in, and we can do family circles here. Whereas in the urban setting, we're just really just dispersed and fractured. And so what are your thoughts about working in an urban setting, or have you? And is there a difference working with urban native family systems versus reservation? So thank you for your time. And I look forward to hopefully talking to you more after Zoom.
I usually have my email put on the last slide, but I have staff trying to get me out of here. And I'd really like to have a session where I can present a lot of I consider myself to be an Indigenous counselor, meaning that I've worked so long that I've realized that, hey, we have our own ways of helping our own people. And I know here where I'm at, these Crow people have their own ways. We've had them for hundreds of years. That's why we're here, that's how we survived, was our culture. And if I can incorporate that on any level, I've seen it and see it continue to work on the Wind River Reservation where I come from. That's why the day that Sweat Lodge gets built out, for this program is the day I know we're going to see more people show up here. I have not worked in an urban area. I visit cities. The largest city I've lived in was Cheyenne, Wyoming, and the population I served there was mainly non-native. So I was probably the only native there, and if we ever got a native client, they got sent to me. And the difference that I saw for the people there was they actually wanted to get away from the reservation and they wanted to be successful in life. I had a guy that came in that looked like he was going to do business, and he was Arapaho. He wore his tie, he dressed really nice, and he's like, I don't want my kids to have anything to do with the reservation. So when you talk about those different levels of acculturation, yes, they're more mainstream. So it's being able to do your own cultural assessment of that individual and asking them, do you want to participate in cultural activities? Because I had people that were non-native that wanted to be a part of the native type of programming or whatever group or activity I might be having. And, you know, because I can't discriminate, I couldn't say, no, you white kids can't come in this group. It's just for us, the Indian kids, you know. They wanted to be a part of, and they were really proud and fully participated. So I see our ways that people are open to coming and learning about how we live and how we believe. And I've just learned that if we can integrate who we are, because counseling is not created by us. We have our own ways of helping our people. When I grew up, I went to grandma and grandpa when I had problems. If grandma and grandpa couldn't help me, they took me to the medicine man or to some ceremony that I needed to be a part of. And I never went to counseling, but I'm here. When you look at this, that dysfunctional family, I was the overachiever. I was the one that made the family look good. That was my role. You know, I raised my younger brother and sister because my mom couldn't do it. And well, she didn't. You know, my grandparents taught me our ways, and they said, we're teaching you all these things because your mom was supposed to do this and she's not. So I tried to take my role seriously and pass that on to my own children so that we can hang on to those ways. So it's being able to incorporate our cultural beliefs into our work, but it's if they want it, we can't push that onto anyone. They have to be open to it.
Yeah, thank you, Avis. I have to go now. I got another meeting, but I just really appreciate your presentation and just want to leave with this is everything you just said I agree with is because I've been working in clinical practice and trying to force culture and integrate it into clinic. I believe it's backwards thinking for tribal communities is the foundation has to be laid on culture. Even if you put a clinic on tribal land, you don't bring the clinic. That's an old Western approach. We're going to come in and save you with our medicine versus let's acknowledge the medicine that's already there. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I hear you saying, grandma's wisdom, grandpa's wisdom. Mm-hmm. We can always go back to what grandma and grandpa says. Mm-hmm. So I just want to just thank you for that.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Thank you so much, Albert, and other participants that stayed on, and of course to Avis for sharing some knowledge with us. Really appreciated everyone's participation. Even though we had some open mic issues, we were able to solve those. So it's the technology world that we live in. Again, we'll reach out to you post-event via email. At that time, you can request CEUs, and also we'll send a link to a copy of a recording of this webinar today, as well as PDF versions of the slides if you're interested. We'll broadcast again next month, first Wednesday of the month. And Avis, what do we have up? I'm looking at my whiteboard here. It looks like for June, we'll do professional readiness. Will be the topic for next month. So we look forward to seeing all of you and perhaps on some of our other events. Until next time, please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected, and we'll see you again. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.